so let's go ahead and get started. I want to tell you about two individuals. One is Bob Anderson. He would drive the 50 yards to his mailbox because he was not able to walk that far. But 2 years later, Bob Anderson biked across Canada in 60 days at the age of 68. The important question is, what made the difference? Another lady is Hulda Crooks. We talked about those who lived in Loma Linda, right, yesterday, and those who lived in Loma Linda who were Seventh-day Adventist fared better, lived longer than their neighbors. Now, how many of you know about California and the smog in the Los Angeles area? Okay, so Loma Linda actually is right next to, can I say that? It's pretty much, they live there, right next to Los Angeles. And I've only been to that part of California twice in my life. I flew into Orlando, Ontario, one of those O's, airport, and we drove all the way. I think it took us about an hour, I don't remember exactly, from the Ontario airport to Loma Linda area, and I just thought we were on a regular road, no scenery to speak of on either side. Well, the next morning I woke up. I'm an early bird, and I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Actually, I think I was up before that, but I went outside at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was already light, and there's these gorgeous mountains right on the other side of the highway. And I ran into my brother, ran into his room, woke him up. I was like, David, there's gorgeous mountains here. I was all excited, maybe a little bit too excited for 5 o'clock in the morning for my brother's sake. But there's so much smog, you could not even see it. But right in the heart of that are these people, Seventh-day Adventists, who live to be 100, many of them, and they live at least 10 years longer than their neighbors who aren't living the Seventh-day Adventist lifestyle. Well, Hulda Crooks was actually one of those living in the Loma Linda area, and from the time that she was a teenager to her mid-60s, she experienced terrible health. She was actually a dietitian. Just because we are dietitians doesn't mean that we make the rubber meet the road, so to speak. She had a very poor diet, a deficient diet. She was overweight. She was constantly fatigued, and she suffered from poor health as well as depression. So after her husband died, she kind of like fell off the cliff, so to speak, and fell really bad into depression. And her doctor told her, you need to start walking. So she did. She started walking, and she actually retired. And this dear lady, she said she started walking seriously at 65. She took it seriously, and she is known to be Grandma Whitney, became her nickname. She has climbed Mount Whitney 23 times. She's set 8 world records, including the oldest woman to climb Mount Fuji, and she's hiked the 212-mile John Muir Trail. Now that's incredible. She did die at 102, I believe. I don't have that information on me, and if my memory serves me correctly, it was 102 when she passed away. So what made the difference? Well, hang that on a hook in your brain, and at the end, oh, there she is on one of her hikes. Put that on a hook in your brain, and we're going to come back to it at the end, and you're going to tell me what made the difference, all right? So, food can prevent and cure diseases, but they can also cause them. Therefore, the best diet is one that would not include a little of everything, but one that would avoid that which is harmful and make moderate use of that which is beneficial. Can we agree with that? All right, good. So we have a statement here that says, food is the habit that has the greatest influence on our health for good or for ill. I will say other than smoking, okay? Smoking obviously is going to play a role in our health. That's huge, okay? And right next to that, or with that, then is the other huge factor is going to be our diet. And next to that is going to be all the 10 laws, really. You got your exercise, your sleep, your water. These are all big. But food, certainly what we fuel our body with, is going to have a big difference. In fact, the father of nutrition tells us that let food be your medicine, and the rest of the quote goes on, and medicine your food. All right? So even though nutrition is one of the newer sciences, we actually are building a good history of how to treat ourselves through nutrition so that it can be the pharmacy on our plate. Now in America we have the good life, right? The concept that Western diseases are lifestyle related and therefore potentially preventable, treatable, and reversible is the most important medical discovery of the 20th century. That is Dennis Burkett. We looked at that Friday evening, you recall. All right? So, the good life, could it be killing us? You know, when I was in 7th grade, my teacher taught us this rhyme. You might be familiar with it. I've heard one other person actually quote it that didn't hear it from me. So, it's good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better best. I'm not interested in the good life. I'm interested in the best life. And that's abundant health and life in Jesus Christ. So, is the good life killing us? That's an important question to ask. And the next question to ask, if I can get my computer to go there, is can we change our course and reverse disease? Okay? This is what we're interested in, and I'm sure this is why every one of you are here this morning. All right? Can we take our health into our own hands? This is what our nation has done for us. You've heard of the 5 a day, right? That's in 1990 slogan was 5 a day, referring to fruits and vegetables, right? So they recommended 5 fruits and vegetables, but in the new century, we have concluded that 5 simply is not enough. So what is the new slogan now? Does anyone know before I put it up? It's actually 9 years old, and I don't know why, but it never made the headlines like 5 a day has made the headlines. We all knew 5 a day, right? And for whatever reason, it has not made it was on our grocery shopping bags for a long time and everything, but it just didn't meet the it didn't appeal to America as well as the 5 a day. But anyway, it's fruits and vegetables more matters is the new slogan, and that was actually in I said 7, it's 2009. 2009, so it's 9 years old. That sounds better. I don't have to talk as loud. All right. Am I still on? Oh, perfect. Okay. So the recommendation actually is 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. That's pretty impressive. How many of you get 7 to 13 fruits and vegetables a day? There's a few of us. All right, well that's really wonderful because those are the foods that are going to help us reverse disease, give us the antioxidants and phytochemicals and the vitamins and minerals and everything that we need to actually build healthy bodies. And this is why our nation is trying to encourage us to eat more fruits and vegetables. However, how many Americans on average, I might be talking to the choir as you would say today, but on average Americans, how many do you think get in 5 fruits and vegetables a day? You see the vegetable aisle shrinking in our grocery store, right? It's usually about 2 2 doors now. And a lot of that is with creams and all this other kind of stuff. It's really amazing. When I was a kid, I'm showing how old I am, it was a whole aisle. It was amazing. So anyway, I'm always amazed every time I go to the grocery store and enter the frozen section, and it's just this much. But yeah, less than 10% actually we're getting in. There are 5 fruits and vegetables a day. So no wonder Americans haven't caught on to more matters, right? Because they weren't even getting the 5. So certainly we need education, right? We need to help each other, encourage each other to strive for the better health until we reach that best health. In reality, we are what we eat. You've probably heard that, right? We are what we eat, because 10 to 20 tons of food is going to pass through our mouths during our lifetime. And it's from that food that we're going to make up our cells and our tissues, our bones and our brains. So if we want good, healthy cells and tissues, come in and have a seat. There's plenty of chairs. If we want to have healthy cells, tissue, bones, and brains, then we need to put in the foods that are going to help create that. So that's what we're going to discover today. But before we do that, we need to acknowledge that just because if we have any problems with eating, if we are addicted to certain foods, it's not like alcohol or smoking, because eating is an inescapable act. If we want to live, we have to eat. All right? So we need to ask ourselves some important questions. Is the food I'm eating, that might be how I'm eating and how much I'm eating, is it helping me or hindering me? Is it possible that the increase in cases of cancer has anything to do with the fact that more and more contaminated or altered food is being eaten? A lot of Americans don't really know how to cook from scratch anymore. We just, dear folks, this isn't from scratch, It's already processed. Not that this is necessarily bad, but I'm just giving you an example, Do foods exist that are capable of preventing and healing disease in our times? And then what type of diet gives me the best quality of life? So we need to choose correctly. We need to buy foods that will help us be able to have the health that we desire and be free of toxic substances, which can be created by how we eat, when we eat. We can actually create toxins ourselves, even though we might have good food. Just by how we eat that food can actually create toxins, which we won't get into today. There isn't enough time to cover everything. But certainly we want to cover the foods that are going to create disease. Okay, so knowing what the healing and preventive properties of food are can actually help us in that. All right, so knowing which foods are advisable for me to eat and which to put aside. And that would be for our health's sake. So just for an example, if we want to avoid obesity, we can compare 2 foods. Let's look at the first food. We have cherries. Let's say we're going to eat a whole pound of cherries. Okay? How many of you like cherries? Oh yeah, okay. They're rather expensive, but when they come into season, right? I like cherries. Let's say we're going to eat 360 calories of cherries. We're going to make a whole meal off cherries, okay? How fast can you eat cherries? These are fresh cherries. These are not the frozen cherries that are already pitted. These are not the, it just left me, the red cherries that you put on top of things. Maraschino cherries. Yeah, these are the fresh with the pit in them. How fast can you eat them? Well, let's say that there are some people who eat faster than others, and I hope all of you are slow eaters, because that's really, really important and good for digestion. But let's say we're actually going to try, we're not going to try, but someone like myself, maybe 10 minutes. Okay? We're going to eat that slowly. And for some of us, that might be 10 minutes. It's going to give us, do you think you'll be full with that? You don't know? More than a pound? Well, that would be a good point, and I don't recommend just eating one food altogether and that be your meal, but we're just using this as an example. So you probably would not be able to eat much more after a pound of cherries, okay? That's going to be about 6 cups of cherries, okay? Yeah, okay? And again, this is the fresh, so they're not compact down, okay? But so there's a lot of air space in between there. But it's going to provide carbohydrate. It's also going to provide fiber, so it's going to have a slow absorption, okay? They're very high in vitamins and minerals, so that's going to help with the metabolism of the sugars and create easier digestion. Now we're going to compare that with a pastry, okay? We're going to have a chocolate pastry. It also is 360 calories, okay? But instead of a pound, it's 3.5 ounces, so less than a quarter of the amount of food that you are going to have with the cherries. How fast is it going to take you to eat that small pastry? You think 2 minutes? You're a slow eater, and that was great. Okay, for myself, it's not going to even take a minute. Okay, you can adjust according to the speed that you eat. Is it going to be filling? Yeah, you're going to be looking for more sensory enjoyment, right? We need something else, but we've had the same amount of calories. All right. What about the saturated fat and the refined carbohydrate? How is our body going to respond to that? It's not going to give us the health probably that we're looking for. And it contributes fatty deposits in the body unless intense physical exercise is done right after to burn it. Okay? So, here's an example. What are we going to choose? You could have, for the exact same amount of calories, right? You could have a pound of cherries, or you can have a pastry. Make sense? All right. So, George Pomelona Rogers is the author of the books Encyclopedia of Foods and Their Healing Power, and he's also a doctor of medicine and a surgeon. And he states, foods of vegetable origin, as with many medicinal plants, can prevent and even heal disorders and diseases of human beings. Even diseases as serious as cancer can be avoided to a large extent with an abundant consumption of certain fruits and vegetables such as broccoli, oranges, and other foods eaten at appropriate times with a thankful heart, along with other aspects of proper lifestyle, as we have talked about the essentials for health. So let's just give an example of that. What are some healing powers of food? Well, avocados. Here is something that is considered a fat, and yet it's going to help us reduce cholesterol and triglycerides. That's pretty interesting, right? But if you take that same amount of fat and you have it from animal products, it's not going to lower your cholesterol and triglycerides. It's going to increase your cholesterol and triglycerides, okay? Oranges. Oranges are high in antioxidants, so they're going to help repair damaged tissue. Broccoli, anti-carcinogenic properties in them. Pistachios, great food for those who are fighting anemia or have low iron levels. Plums help keep us regular. There's some ideas. Oops. Pineapples got out of order there. Pineapples help with digestion. All right, let's look at some benefits of fruit. Fruit is synonymous with good health. You know, there's really no other food that has as many preventive and healing properties as fruit. So it would be a true medicinal food, natural medicine, if you will. Fruit is very attractive. If you have a bowl of fruit on the table, it's pleasing to the eye, isn't it? And those who have fruit on their counter and not anything else, not any other foods that people can grab, they tend to weigh about 15 pounds less than those who have sodas and cereals and other foods on their counter. A very interesting study. We cover it in our Start a New You program, so we won't cover it in that much detail here. But yes, it's attractive, it's appetizing, it's easy to eat. You want fast food, this is fast food, and it's also refreshing. It doesn't require cooking or processing. That doesn't mean you can't, but it doesn't require it. You can eat it raw, okay? It detoxifies the body and regulates the intestines. The fruit does not produce any toxic residue. Most of our foods do, but fruit does not. Animal products create a large toxic residue. Fruit also has a diuretic effect that helps us with the elimination of any toxic waste or substances that are in the blood, especially like uric acid. If you suffer from gout, you know all about purines and uric acid. And fruit actually helps relieve that pain from the gout. It also contains antioxidants. Hold on. There you go. It also contains antioxidants. Antioxidants can help prevent aging. How many of you want to prevent aging? Yeah, of course, right? Myself included. As well as arteriosclerosis, cancer, and the lifestyle diseases that we've been talking about. And this is backed up by many studies showing that fruit can help prevent things as serious as cancer. You know, cancer is very difficult actually to treat once we have it. There's stories out there of people who have done very well. In fact, our administrative assistant who used to work here, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's doing fantastic. She is cancer-free. She's doing great. So we have the stories, but we have a lot of stories of cancer that doesn't quite turn out that way, right? Unfortunately. Cancer is hard to treat, but we can prevent it much easier. And how's the saying go? An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Is that how it goes? Yeah. All right. So this would apply especially to cancer. Healing power of vegetables. Even though the bulk of weight of vegetables is water, vegetables represents a natural pharmacy of minerals, vitamins, and phytochemicals. We're going to look at some fruits and vegetables and kind of go down through the body head to toe. We might not cover everything, obviously. Time will only allow us to do so much. But we're going to go through and look at some foods that are specifically, that we can use specific for the various organs and treatments that we want to accomplish. So let's look at foods for the eyes. Well, apricots. Apricots are full of the vitamin A in a usable form, or can be converted to a usable form. They also are high in vitamin C as well as vitamin E, high in the minerals of calcium, magnesium, iron, potassium, and zinc. And they're known to be advantageous for the eye. All right. Another one, I'm sure you all know this one, is the carrots. Maybe you don't know about the alfalfa greens, but everyone knows carrots are good for the eyes. In fact, these two are the richest food in vitamin A, and so indeed they make them a true dietary medicine. I see people taking notes, so that's why I'm pausing. All right. What about the liver and gallbladder? These days we have a lot of issues. Fatty livers is on the rise. A lot of people are getting their gallbladder removed. Is there anything we can do to prevent that? In fact, we can. Probably need more than an hour presentation to actually even cover any one of these aspects. But just for starters, artichokes are a great detoxifier and decongestant for the liver. They can also help the gallbladder produce bile. A radish, again, promotes bile production and the decongesting of the liver and facilitates the gallbladder drainage. All right, what about foods for the respiratory system? Did you know onions are one of the best foods we can eat for our lungs? I suffer from bronchitis. I haven't had it in a long time, but I started to get it when I first moved here, and I realized I couldn't go out, and I moved from Florida. So coming from Florida, and it was just before winter. So then coming from Florida and then coming to the cold temperatures, morning temperatures, and my routine is get up and get outside and exercise. And it just was too cold for my lungs, so I learned I had to exercise that early inside, and then I could go out in the middle of the day once it warmed up. But anyway, growing up, chronic bronchitis, I coughed all winter long. I had great stomach muscles. Since I've been on this diet, I lost my stomach muscles because I'm not coughing as much. But maybe I can laugh more. Maybe that'll build them back up. But yeah, onions, great for treating bronchitis. For children, it might be easier for them to close their eyes and actually breathe in the onion. But for those of us who don't mind, chopping up an onion and actually eating an onion can actually halt a asthma crisis. So, very good. Interesting, huh? So onion will help relieve a cough as well. If you like onion, that would be an option for you as well. Figs. Figs also help relieve cough and might be more tolerable for some than an onion. So they also help us get rid of whatever phlegm is in us, so an expectorant. And it soothes the respiratory tract. Okay, so if you suffer from chronic bronchitis, you can keep figs in your fridge. Dried, they keep a long time. So there's always a container of figs in my fridge. We're talking food, but I'll just throw this out because I suffer from it, and that is oregano oil. As soon as my lungs are my weak link, so if I'm going to get sick, I know it's going to go to my lungs. So the first thing I do is take that oregano oil, and it usually. I was sick when soon after I came here, and we knocked it. 24 hours later, I was fine. It didn't last, but I went through a bunch of natural remedies, and the oregano oil was fine. And I learned I can't go outside in the cold weather. I'm much better now, I think, anyway, because I'm outside early morning, and I haven't had problems. But just the transition from Florida to here, it kind of threw my body into a shock. All right, digestive system. Of course, most of us know about the papaya. In the tropics, it's considered the perfect breakfast food. And they actually serve in Hawaii. You guys were in Hawaii. You can vouch whether this is true. But in many places where you go in Hawaii to like resorts and things, they serve you a half of a papaya every morning. Did you guys ever experience that? Yes. Okay. All right. I've never been to Hawaii, so I can only say what I've heard. Cauliflower. Cauliflower, if you have trouble with the cabbage family, try cauliflower. It's one of the easier cabbage family foods to digest. And it still has all the wonderful properties of the cabbage family. If you have ulcers, the cabbage family is very beneficial to help the healing process of those ulcers, not just in the stomach, but the whole GI tract. and it helps regulate the bowels as well. So cauliflower can be mixed with potatoes. Maybe some of you have heard of this. It's becoming more in vogue. You really don't taste the cauliflower a whole lot, and it's an easy way to get it in. If you like mashed potatoes, just throw some cauliflower in there with it, mashed up of course, and not too overcooked, because then it becomes strong flavored. All right, what about grains? Did you know that grains are a great source of protein as well as vitamins and minerals? We think of grains as carbohydrates, right? And we put an X over them. But it's not so. Grains are actually very nutritious, and if we eat them in their whole form, I should say they are nutritious. When we refine them, then we devalue them greatly. All right, but they're a great source of protein, vitamins, and minerals. We want to eat them in their whole form as much as possible, the way they come provided by nature. And we want to have all three components intact, okay? Any part of the three components, the bran, the endosperm, or the germ, any part of these is not equal to the sum. You know, you can extract something out, and that's what you're going to get out, and then you don't have the rest to properly digest it. So say, for instance, bran. Bran is going to actually bind your iron and your zinc, some very important minerals that we need for our body for glucose regulation. And if we just eat the bran, well, we can interrupt the process of proper digestion. If we just have the endosperm, that's the starches and the proteins that are in there, and there's very little fat in grains, well, we don't have all the vitamins and the minerals and the fiber to actually process it, and that's what you're getting when you use white flour, okay, with a few synthetic vitamins, as we talked about earlier, that have been added back in. And then the germ, while it's very nutritious, it doesn't have the essential macronutrients, the carbohydrates and the protein, to properly absorb it. So while we might use these here and there, as a general rule, we want to use the whole grain in the form that nature has provided it for us to get the full benefit of the grain. Wheat germ, it's very high in vitamin E, and it has some good properties. We can actually use it for some of our treatment of depression and things like this. But what is going to be better, getting the germ by itself or getting that germ in the whole grain product that has the carbohydrates and the protein, so it can actually be assimilated nicely into the blood and into the body? It's going to be better in the whole. You get to choose what you put in your mouth. I'm not going to tell you you can't eat anything. However, you're not going to get the nutrition that you're looking for, because any part is not as good as the sum. Is that how the equation goes? As the whole. Right. Okay. Yeah, wheat and barley and... No, we're not talking raw. Yeah, you would need to cook them either in water or bake them in bread, which you're adding water and then getting rid of the water. Yeah, you would have to process them. Grain actually can be eaten raw. It's just not very palatable. So you won't suffer any ill effects from eating it raw, other than, you know, some of the phytate maybe that's there. It's not going to be, but if you even soaked it, it would still be considered raw, and then you'd get rid of the phytate. But that's probably beyond what we're talking about today. Okay. Yeah, for some people, obviously for you it is good. I've had raw corn. I like it cooked. Yeah, good. All right, so what are some benefits of grains? We're going to look at the benefits, and we're going to also look at the drawbacks, and then we can decide what we want to do with the grains. See, we are in charge of our own health, and so we need to be able to make the choices. And so if you choose to eat white rice and you choose to put wheat germ in there, well, that's your choice, but you just need to know the information so that you can make the most intelligent decision possible, right? All right, so let's look. What are some benefits? And when we talk about benefits, we're talking about the whole grain, okay? And then we're going to talk about drawbacks in a minute. All right, so the whole grain compared to a refined product is going to contain 3 times more nutrition or nutrients than the refined product, okay? And so this is going to help with the absorption of those. It's perfectly packaged for proper digestion. It's very rich in fiber. It produces satisfaction and a sense of fullness when we eat it, so it can prevent obesity. It improves intestinal function and lessens constipation. It reduces cancer and all the lifestyle diseases that we've talked about. CAD is cardiovascular arterial. What is it? I can't think. There we go. Coronary artery disease. And DM is diabetes. All right. And yeah, it affects both. And of course, it's cholesterol free. Cholesterol is found only where? Animal products is correct, but what did you say? It's on the interior of your heart. That's where it can build up. That's where we don't want it, okay? Our livers produce all the cholesterol we need, so if we're eating cholesterol, that's in addition to what our body actually needs, okay? And plant products do not contain any cholesterol unless we add them. All right, so what are the drawbacks? Well, a lot of our grains are deficient in lysine. That's an important amino acid. It's an essential amino acid. So if we were just to eat, say, wheat, well, we would become deficient in a very important amino acid, and that would create a domino effect of problems. So we don't want to just have one grain. We need a multiple sources of grains for one, and that way you'll get varying levels. And then if we add legumes or we add other sources of lysine in there, then you would be able to get enough of that lysine and not become deficient. So legumes are beans, peas, and lentils, by the way. Grains do acidify the blood. You've heard that. Oh, they're very acidic. Well, they're very low acidic compared to animal products, cheese, meat, and fish. Poultry would be included in that meat category. All right, but it is true they do acidify the blood, but you throw the legumes in there with it, you're fine. Okay, now there are people who are allergic to gluten containing grains. Well, that would definitely be a drawback for those who are allergic either to gluten or they have celiac disease. Okay, and celiac, just because you're allergic to gluten doesn't mean you have celiac disease, but if you have celiac disease, you are definitely allergic to gluten. Okay, let's talk about insomnia. A lot of people are having trouble with sleeping properly. So we got some really good tips on helping you sleep better through going through the essentials for health. I know Dr. Mills went over that, and Nancy went over that. So we're going to go over now other aspects, okay? So when food is eaten is going to be important, and also what food is eaten is going to influence how well we're going to sleep. And there's one. Also, heavy meals in the evening can interfere with our sleep. So even if these are healthy meals or healthy foods, they can disturb our sleep. So what would those be? Let's look at, oops. Oh, I didn't. Well, we'll talk about those that help us sleep. It looks like the other foods are afterwards. So the foods that are going to help us sleep are calming foods. Oats actually have a calming effect on the brain. They it says milk. That should be mild. A mild sedative, okay, is Avian. So eating oats in the evening, I'm not sure who actually presented, but they said we need to flip our meals so that our lighter meal is in the evening and our heavier meal is in the morning, and maybe both of them touched on it. But anyway, it's actually true. If you were to have your breakfast food, such as oatmeal, in the evening, you'd actually do better than having it in the morning where you need to get up and get going, right? Lettuce actually has a very calming effect on our system. So that would be a good choice. And carbs in general, given that they're whole foods, we're not talking the refined carbs, are going to have a calming effect on our system. And if you eat a high carb meal, you might actually feel like you're kind of nodding off a little bit, right? And so knowing just how much carb to have and when to cut back on the carbohydrates is going to be important. Flipping to the complete opposite of some have done and going to the high protein and forget the carbs altogether, yeah, that can have devastating effects on our kidneys, our liver, and gallbladder. It's hard on our system. So as we've already established throughout the weekend, our body runs best on the carbohydrates that break down to glucose and fuel our system. It's the easiest, the least amount of waste in the breakdown of carbohydrates to glucose and then fueling the body. All right, what are some stimulating foods? Well, stimulating beverages would be top on that list. So anything that contains caffeine is going to be stimulating, and that would include chocolate. Sometimes we really like to have that. 2 little pieces of chocolate, not so bad, in the evening as a little treat. It would be better to have that in the morning than to have it in the evening. Okay? Hot spices are very stimulating to the system. So having those late in the evening is going to interfere with your sleep. So, your jalapenos or your ghost peppers. Anyone tried a ghost pepper here? Yeah, they're supposed to be the hottest known pepper currently. So they'll continue to get hotter and create something else eventually. But that's how we humans are. And then meat, cheese, and other concentrated proteins, even if it's from a plant source, you have like Boca burgers and things like this, they're higher in protein, and they're going to be stimulating. Now your animal products, your cheese and your meat, actually have chemical in them naturally. If we were to take, God forbid, and I'm not promoting this, but if we were to take some of our own flesh and eat that, it would be in there too. So it's all in all animal kingdom. We have what's called hypoxanthine, and if it ends in an -ine, what else ends in an -ine? We just mentioned it. Lysine, yeah. Caffeine, that's what I was looking for. Yes. So it's in the same family. In fact, the structure is very similar to caffeine, and so this is a wake-up food. Again, if you're going to have it, it'd be better to have it in the morning. Steak in the morning. We serve it, right? All right. So if we want to sleep well, then we need calming foods. So what are some foods that are going to help our nervous system? If we suffer from depression, anxiety, other situations, almonds actually help strengthen the nerves to tolerate better. They tone muscles. They help us deal with stress more effectively, as well as depression and fatigue. They're better than other nuts, but walnuts, for another reason, because of the omega-3s in them, are also beneficial for the brain. But yes. Yep, it would be best to have your nuts. Now, it probably an individual basis, like in the evening, if someone has diabetes and they're just going to have an apple, that's not going to work. they're going to have something with that. Now, they could have celery with it to help balance that carbohydrate, or they could have the nuts. But yeah, if you have insomnia, then the nuts aren't going to be your best, because they are a more concentrated protein, which is still a wake-up food. So I recommend actually a 1/4 cup of nuts to all my patients at breakfast. That's when I recommend they get in their nuts. Did I say that? I thought you were the one who said it. I said, yes, you can. I'm sorry, I didn't know I said that. I thought you were saying, can you eat them in the afternoon? And I said, yes, you can. So I misunderstood you, and you misunderstood me. I apologize. Yeah. All right, so oats, again, help balance the nerves, and they improve mental performance as long as we don't overdo it and start nodding off. They also help lower cholesterol. And another great food for our nervous system is flaxseed. Again, high in omega-3s. In order to get the maximum nutrition from flaxseed, it needs to be freshly ground. So if you have a coffee grinder at home, or if you have a blender, either way, coffee grinder is, for me, easier, is you just put a tablespoon in there, grind it up, and you will be able to absorb that nutrition, and it's best if you eat it right away. But if you decide to get to what's already ground from the store, keep it in the freezer, take out your tablespoon, and put it right back in the freezer, because the fats in flaxseed are not stable, and they go rancid very quickly, very easily, and they taste absolutely horrible once they go rancid. You will know. If it doesn't taste good, don't eat it, okay? So make sure that the flaxseed, ideally buy the seed, grind it each morning. 1 to 3 tablespoons a day would be ideal if you have high cholesterol, if you are suffering from depression, anxiety, any mental illness. That flaxseed would be very beneficial. It's beneficial for diabetes as well. So 1 tablespoon every morning for sure, but you can do 3 tablespoons a day as well, a tablespoon with each meal. I sprinkle it over salads. Some of my patients don't actually like it, and so they will put it in the corner of whatever they're eating and literally take it like medicine. Pharmacy on your plate, okay? And that's one way to get it down. If you don't have high cholesterol and triglycerides, you're taking it for some other reason, then mixing it with peanut butter, and get the natural peanut butter ideally, okay? Mixing it with that. I actually had that this morning. So a little peanut butter mixed in with the flaxseed. You can. Yes, as long as your house doesn't get too hot. If your house is air conditioned. If you don't have air conditioning, or for whatever reason you're not choosing to use your air conditioner, go ahead and put it in the fridge. It would be better. You can also put it in the freezer, but just keep it cool. Okay. All right, what about legumes? The king of fiber. They provide protein as well as fiber, and they have no cholesterol. So here's a good source of protein. It's not only going to not give you any cholesterol, it's going to lower your cholesterol. It's going to fight against that buildup of cholesterol in the blood and walls of your vessels. Now, if you were to compare dollar for dollar for, say, you're going to buy a steak, okay, or ground beef, whatever it is, okay? Poultry. Just take a dollar figure and then go buy that same amount of beans. In the end, which is going to have a larger quantity? Absolutely. So, they're the cheapest source of protein on planet Earth if you buy them dried. And if you buy them canned, that's a different story. But we're talking dried, right? And then you can prepare them in many different ways, and they can be enjoyed, and I got ahead of myself, but economical. They're also earth friendly, okay? They fit in the green movement, if you will. They would actually yield 7 times as much food in terms of calories and protein per acre as a land that would be used for livestock, that would be used for meat, okay? Plus, beans naturally fertilize our soil. They have nitrogen. They give nitrogen to the soil. And they're medicinal. They help with cholesterol and triglycerides, as we've already mentioned. They help regulate blood sugar. They relieve constipation, hypertension, gallstones. I should say really it's more of a prevention of gallstones. Once you have gallstones, that might be a different story. And it reduces the risk of cancer as well. All right, sugar. I didn't. Reduce your risk of cancer. Yes. All right, sugar. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Lentils and peas. So you have your split peas, which are dried, but then you also have your garden peas, which would be legumes. Yeah, your green peas. And your snow peas, well, that's just the husk. It hasn't developed into beans yet, so that's a vegetable. It's not a legume. I mean, it would be if it continued to grow, but just so you know, there is a difference between those. Okay? Any other questions? Great. All right, sugar. So, we can do a formula, and it can be, as it's written there, more sugar, less fiber is going to equal disease. Okay? I don't know that I have these numbers off the top of my head, but I'm going to throw them out and give you ballpark numbers. How many feet of sugar cane does it take to make a teaspoon of sugar? 3, 10. Okay. Actually, it's right in between there. It's probably about 5 feet. Okay? Now, that's a ballpark figure. I'd have to go look it up again and just confirm that. But you can look it up on the internet yourself, and then you can see, just how many feet does it take. And so, how many of you have had sugar cane? How many of you chewed on sugar cane? Okay, a few of you. How sweet is it? Yeah, it's not overwhelmingly sweet, is it? It's just like, a little sweet here and there, right? And so, and how long can you chew a foot of sugar cane? Right. You could chew on that all day and then some, right? And still not make much of a dent into it. So this kind of helps us understand just how sweet sugar really is and how concentrated of a food it is. And once it goes through the process of being made into white sugar, there isn't much nutritional value to it. Now, I know it was said yesterday that sugar is toxic. And I just like to clarify that a little bit. And the effects of sugar are toxic. But sugar in and of itself, there isn't any research showing us that sugar in itself is a toxin or a carcinogen. Okay? What it does is it robs our bodies of the necessary nutrients that we need for digestion to build it. It takes from our bones, and it takes from the other, because it's not a complete food. It's so refined, so it has to, in order to be digested, it has to rob from everywhere else to actually process it. And this is actually what causes the problem with sugar, is it's just way too refined. But in and of itself, it's actually not a toxin. Is it addictive? It is addictive. Okay, so that part was true. It is very addictive. And for those of us who are addictive, and I say us because that would include me, I'm a recovering sugaraholic. We have to make a clean break with sugar. There is no moderation, just as there's not moderation for a drunkard and there's not moderation for a nicotine addict. We have to make that clean break. And if we understand foods can be addictive, then we can treat it that way. And we can say, honestly, I'm addicted to sugar, and therefore I can't have it. I can't even have a little bit. And for those of you who are addicted to sugar, then when you allow yourself to have that piece of chocolate, or you allow yourself to have that, even the pudding like we had yesterday, which didn't have any sugar in it. It was sweetened. The blueberries were sweetened with a little maple syrup, which is still sugar. But it was sweetened with dates. But it's still sweet, right? How many of you don't have to answer this, answer it in your own mind, but how many of you wanted to go back and have, I need a little bit more of that, and I need a little bit more of that, right? Yeah, because we have become, say it again? It had carob for those of you who aren't here. Yeah. And you can omit that, and it would be vanilla instead. And we've served that here as well. But anyway, I lost my train of thought now. You need a clean break. That's the point. Okay? And just be very honest with ourselves, because if we're if we're addicted, we're going to just crave more and more and more. So it's, for me, definitely is easier just to do a clean break. We would really like to believe that there is. And there is only in the fact that the cane sugar, when it still has a little bit of that brown to it, it hasn't been bleached. Yeah, so that's really good. But yeah, it's still a concentrated sugar, and we can really pat ourselves on the back and really think we're doing all the good by using cane sugar. It's still sugar. All right, so maple syrup is, still sugar. Honey, it's still sugar. Agave, it's still sugar. Maple syrup is high glycemic. Honey is lower, and agave is lower still. So but I guess my point that I'm trying to make is, anytime we concentrate a food, maple syrup, how is it a concentrated food? It has lots of vitamins and minerals. It's compared to sugar, the white sugar, very nutritious, However, it's still concentrated. My uncle processed maple syrup and cooked it down and stuff, and it's like water when it comes from the tree. It's not very sweet, not you cook it down and now you have a nice syrup, so it's concentrated. So we have to be careful on all these levels, and too much of any good thing. The Bible tells us, eat a little honey. It's not that we can't have any, but we should use it sparingly. For those of us who need to make a clean break, we might need to take that into consideration. Yeah. So there's lots of benefits. We use honey in cooking. We use, as you saw yesterday, we have maple syrup. You're going to find out how we made the pudding today that you ate yesterday. So it's not that we can't ever have something sweet. It's that we need to make the intelligent choices, right?
Well,
all right.
Like you're saying, fruits, all your fruits and stuff, you get sugar naturally.
Right.
Just adding more, like you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
that step,
Mm-hmm.
just adding more.
So fruit is in its own category. Even though it does break down 100% to sugar in the body, it has everything that it needs to be able to digest that. And so we tolerate it much better. Now I'm talking the fruit with the fiber. There was one fruit that has kind of equal amount almost of fiber throughout, and that would be your apple. So it has the soluble and insoluble in the apple, not just in the peeling. And that's why when you take the peeling off, you still have you have all the pectin. You can still make your apple butter without adding any pectin and all this kind of stuff because all the fiber's still there. So, yeah. But a lot of the fiber for most fruits is in the skin. So when we take the skin off, then we're not getting as much. Mango, you take the skin off, don't eat it. It's not good for you. There's a few that some people actually can eat it, but that's what most people are allergic to with the mango is actually the skin and right around the seed. So, all right, we better move on. I get a little wordy sometimes. Just basically to reduce cholesterol, you want to move from animal origin foods to plant foods. We're going to move on because we're kind of out of time now. Again, foods for the heart, walnuts and bananas are beneficial. Avocados, we've already talked about those a little bit. Strawberries are also good for arteries. I know I'm going fast. I want to get to the end because I want you to see the end. Foods that help prevent cancer. 40% of all cases of cancer that appear in developed countries, that's us, are directly related to the foods that we eat. So foods that increase cancer risk would be your meat, your dairy, and your processed foods. Foods that are preventive against cancer are your fruits, your vegetables, whole grain, and legumes. To a smaller degree, nuts can play a part, but if we overdo the nuts, no. Okay, so a very small amount of nuts can have a protective aspect for cancers like colon cancer, stomach cancers, things like this. Okay, all right, you remember our two stories. We had Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Crooks. All right, what made the difference? This is their own conclusion. A diet, this is Mr. Anderson, a diet of rich, refined foods and a lack of exercise can make you old before your time. But with a healthy lifestyle, worthwhile goals, a positive mental attitude, it is possible to enjoy life well into your golden years. And Miss Crooks says, I have an abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables as well as the cooked kind. You need both a good diet and sufficient exercise. What made the difference for them? They changed their lifestyle. Just as you can start a new you, they started a new you. A new them. All right, let's put the puzzles of the pieces of the puzzle together. A suitable diet can do much for your health and for your well-being than the most powerful medicines and sophisticated medical devices. Do you agree? To eat well, you need to be well informed. And I hope this weekend you have gained some information that you can start the process of making some changes to improve your life and live that long life that you are hopefully desiring. We must make the correct choices of the foods that we're going to introduce into our stomach that's going to make up our blood vessels and tissues and bones and brains. The best foods must be chosen and the harmful ones avoided. And information is power, but information applied is health.